View from the Gutters, episode 64. Welcome to View from the Gutters, the comic book podcast where each episode we discuss a collected edition, trade paperback, or graphic novel, and then recommend and vote on the book for the next episode. Warning: the discussion portion of this show has massive spoilers for that book. On this episode, we discuss Superior Spider-Man, number 1 through 31. And, to skip ahead to the recommendation section, skip to 128.20. You guys ready?
Yes, I'm ready.
All right.
I think so.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm ready.
Welcome to episode 64. I'm Andrew Chad.
I'm Tobiah Panchin.
And I'm Kid Reynolds.
And we killed
Joe is a bitch.
And we killed him.
We killed him, and we stuffed his body in the sewer underneath Cookie Jail, where the Cookie Gators live.
Yeah. He'll be back next week.
I was just about to say, just like Peter Parker, he'll be back.
Oh, yeah.
So you pitched the book.
I did.
Or Chard.
Yeah.
What are we talking about?
We're talking about Superior Spider-Man, number 1 through 31. And I reread it for this. Do you want me to just dive in and go for it? All right, sweet.
Yeah, just start talking.
I reread it. I really like this series still. It's a lot easier to see the cracks in the system, though, rereading it in singles. Like, there's some stuff that I was like, oh, this is so good because it doesn't have all of these comic book tropes. And then when you read it again, you're like, they're kind of still there. They're just sort of subtler.
Can you give me an example?
Like the team-ups. Like, team-ups and crossovers was something I was like, it doesn't hit any events, which is still true. Like, it doesn't... There's no event crossover with this book, except that there's like a Age of Ultron Superior Spider-Man issue. But
Which
it's
I didn't read that
extemporaneous
one.
to
Right,
this one,
it's completely separate from the rest of the series.
It doesn't matter. And then, like, the annuals, I didn't even read this time because I skipped annual 1 the first time I read it anyway.
I didn't realize that there was a second annual.
Yeah, the second annual.
I had the first annual.
It's kind of pointless. It's a Wraith story. I mean, it's not pointless, but it's like, it's non-essential, which I like. It's like, oh, cool, you can just read it later.
Yeah, the first annual is also kind of extra. Like, you don't need to read it.
And I didn't read it this time either, so I've never read the annuals on this, and I don't really know what they're all about, but...
Mostly the one annual I read, the first annual, it's just Spider-Man, like, torturing this dude.
Oh, weird.
Like, that's the gist of it.
Yeah, I did notice there were a lot of points in this where it was like, see Superior Spider-Man, or not Superior Spider-Man, but like, see... Superior Team Up issue 4, see SSM annual number 1, see Agent Venom X... issue whatnot. I was just like,
and I'm totally fine with that.
Fuck that.
No, and I'm way cooler with that than like, it's like, oh, if after I've read all of this and I'm in love with that character and I want to go back and read all of those other crossovers, it's like you can, but I like that they're not essential.
Yeah, like reading this originally, I feel like I got a lot more out of it because there was Superior Spider-Man and he was doing his Superior Spider-Man thing.
Right.
But then there was also, like, Spider-Man was in Avengers, and he was also showing up in Mighty Avengers, and he was crossing over with Venom.
And were those the Octavius ones?
What's that?
Was that the Octavius Spider-Man?
Yeah, that's all Superior Spider-Man,
That's all the Superior Spider-Man. And, like, you were seeing him interacting with all of these different groups. So, like, it's cool when the Avengers show up in his book, and they're like, you're acting weird, we think you're a Skrull.
Right.
But it's a lot cooler, like, when you've seen all of his interactions with all these different characters in the other books. Like, in Avengers at one point, they're like in the Savage Land or something, and everybody's like, they're splitting off into groups, and a couple of people are going around, and they're like, is it just me, or has Spider-Man kind of been a dick recently? And they're like, yeah, man, I don't know what happened. And in Mighty Avengers at one point, they're like, man, what the fuck crawled up his ass? And some dude's like, you read Atlas Shrugged. I've seen it before.
That is like my one complaint. Well, that's not my one complaint. It's one of my complaints with the series is the Avengers showing up to be like, Peter, you're acting weird, or Spider-Man, you're acting weird. Happens like 3 times in this book, and 2 of them are only like 4 issues apart. And that, reading it in a big chunk like this, like, was a lot more noticeable. Twice. I think it happens 3 times. I think they go to him and they test him, and then they come back and they take him to the Avengers Tower, and Tony Stark's like, I saw you wipe the thing from the device.
Well, no, they test him the first time.
Yeah.
And then later they drag him back to Avengers Tower. Or no, they drag him back to Avengers Tower and he quits.
And he jumps out the window.
And then
third
later
time they come back and they get him is like right in the middle of the Goblin War.
Right,
like,
and they don't actually like take him back. They just talk about it.
Yeah, but they do another like a third panel of like, we gotta go get Spider-Man.
Yeah, well, they're
and stop
talking
him.
about
Yeah, and it's like the first time I read it in single issues, it wasn't as noticeable because it was way.
Well, the thing that everybody talks about, or what we're talking about when those single issues were coming out, was like, come on, like nobody is noticing this.
Yeah,
and like reading it back now, all in one chunk, it's like, yeah, everybody was suspicious.
Yeah.
Like they kept talking about like, man, what's going on with Spider-Man? What's going on with Spider-Man? But they tested him, and he was canny enough to like stay away from psychic people.
Right.
And like you can see his like charade decaying around him as he just completely destroys Peter Parker's life.
Yeah.
But I think that Dan Slott actually did a really good job of legitimately making him like not revealing that he's like secretly Otto Octavius, but having people be suspicious like what's going on with Spider-Man.
Yeah, I kind of thought he would tell more people that he was Otto.
Well, he
like,
told people who were about to die because he was going to kill them.
He told villains that were about to die, and then he didn't tell his old girlfriend, which I liked because it was like, oh, I've moved on. I'm with this new girl who is one of my favorite characters in the whole series. And then, yeah, he tells Norman sort of. Like, Norman figures it out.
Well, yeah, Norman figures it out because he read Carly's book.
Right, who also figured it out.
Yeah, she was the only person who really figured it out on her own.
Well, she was the only person there when Otto actually died with Peter's consciousness inside him.
Right.
And when he comes back at the end, which you guys all read, so I don't have to say spoilers, she takes a shot at him. Like, she's like, he's like, I'm Spider-Man. I'm not Otto. But she still shoots him, and that's how he gets her to believe that he's Peter. It's like no one else would know that. Mm-hmm. Which is weird, too, because how does his consciousness, like, transfer back?
Actually, Dan Slott explains this.
In the book?
Not in the book.
Oh, okay.
Like, afterwards in an interview, because people were complaining about this last week.
Oh,
this doesn't make sense to me.
I did not care. Like, I read it and I was like, oh, that's weird. Whatever. Like, the whole book is, like, very hard to swallow. Like, oh, I overlaid a consciousness over another consciousness.
Yeah, it's kind of weird.
I erased it all, but then it came back.
But the explanation that Slott gave me was, in my opinion, good enough for comic book logic.
Oh, yeah.
Which is basically, like, at the end of Amazing Spider-Man 700, like, after the brain swap has already happened, mm-hmm. Peter is dying in Otto's body, and Otto's like, I'm going to be Spider-Man. I'm going to take your place. And Peter's like, if you're going to be Spider-Man, you need all my memories. Like, here they are. And he, like, gives Otto all of his memories, and Otto resists that. So he only has bits and pieces of Peter's memories, and he has to access them.
I see.
And so he, like, wipes all that out in the book.
Right.
And then towards the end, the fragment of Peter that's left in his mind is reliving all of Otto's memories. And he gets up to the point in Otto's life where that transference happens. And unlike Otto, who resisted that, he accepts that transfer of memories. And so he gets all of his memory back.
Nice.
And that's like how he's resurrected as Peter Parker.
That panel is like one of my favorite panels.
And that is a fucking incredible
he's, like,
panel.
Walking down that hallway of webbing, the webbing is containing panels from old Spider-Man comics.
Yeah, I thought that was actually really well done.
I did too. All the time that he's in Otto's mind, those panels are expertly laid out. Like, they're cool stuff.
Also, something that was not clear to me the first time, and I don't know why it wasn't, I guess I just didn't pick it up, is that when the fragment of Peter comes back, it's because Otto's trying as hard as he can to, like, resurrect any fragment of Peter's memories that he still had.
Right.
And, like, that's what brings the fragment of Peter back. I thought he was just like, oh, I'm not really dead.
Right.
Aha.
Yeah, I like that.
So, I mean, I thought that all of the elements around the brain swap, which are so often done very, very poorly, actually worked well in this story.
Yeah.
Like, I think it hangs together.
Yeah, it was a good enough story that I was willing to buy whatever he was selling. I was like, whatever, you've got me hooked at this point. Like, you didn't start explaining the science side of it, and still, I had already fallen in love with, like, the Otto Spider-Man.
Spock.
Yeah.
Spider-Ock.
Spock.
Octo Peter.
I like that.
So, Cade, what did you think of this book?
Is this the first time you read it?
It is the first time I read it, and I didn't like it.
What didn't you like?
Boom, pin drop.
Chris Nolan bass hit.
Yeah. Blah. Dun, 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 dun. Blah. All right, go ahead. Sorry.
Okay, so I found myself, upon reading it, okay, so the first couple of issues had me.
Yeah.
And then it lost me.
Do you remember where?
I really liked him having to work with the Peter in his mind at the beginning. Being like, you have to be Spider-Man now, and this is why. And then the moment that he kills the first person, I was just like, no, I'm
Massacre.
done. Yeah, this was... Wait, Massacre?
Right? Isn't that his name?
No, it was the guy on the roof. He shoots him with the gun.
Oh, he's in the guy in Grand Central Station?
The guy with the plate who, like, couldn't feel emotions.
Yeah, that's Massacre, right?
Yeah, that is Massacre, unless Kate, you're thinking of somebody else.
That's the first guy he shoots. It's the guy he shoots in the head when he's surrounded by cops.
Was that in issue 3 or 4?
No. The only guy that he, like, purposefully pulls the trigger on is Massacre. He also kills...
very badly wounds Adrian Toombs in issue 3.
And then he kills...
That could have been it that I was thinking of.
He like crashes him into the spider signal, which I actually thought was hilarious.
Yes, that actually is what it was. And they thought that he killed him.
Yeah, he wasn't actually dead.
Right? Yeah.
I do want to interrupt you for 1 second. I thought the whole spider signal bit where he's like, you're turning on a floodlight that tells all my enemies exactly where I'm going to be.
Yeah, this was a test. I passed, right?
Yeah,
I love how he manipulates Jonah.
That actually is on my list of notes that I have. These are the cool points of this book.
Yeah, I thought that was a really fun moment.
It was.
Yeah. Was it just that he was being a killer?
It was that he... Okay. I should say that these days, I'm quick to point out that Spider-Man is not my favorite superhero. When in point of fact, for a long time, he was.
Yeah.
And for me, Spider-Man kind of ended it with the whole One More Day thing, because that was dumb. Aunt May should have died.
No, I agree. That's when I stopped reading Spider-Man. This is the first Spider-Man book I've read since that.
Yeah.
And I've heard everything after One More Day, Brand New Day. All of that, which is where Dan Slott started writing Spider-Man. I've heard all of that's fantastic.
Yeah, I actually feel like Marvel has played a horrible prank on all of us.
Yeah.
Because Brand New Day was so bad. And then immediately...
One More Day was so bad.
I always get them backwards in my head. One More Day was so bad. And then Dan Slott picks up the book and immediately like starts making changes.
Right.
And that's when it got really good. And he's been writing it for...
Oh, God.
10 years?
A long time.
Ever
since Straczynski left. It was like Straczynski for 10
years. So that was in
years.
2007, I think.
Yeah. And so like...
Okay, so for 7 years.
7 years, yeah.
For a long time, though.
Yeah.
And there's a part of me that kind of wants to go back and like review that material.
Yeah, I want to, too.
Although I'm not going to.
I think I will. At some point, I will.
Someday,
I'll have read everything else.
Maybe at one point we'll do a long run and we'll just do Dan Slott's entire run on Spider-Man.
That sounds good.
See, the early Straczynski years were my favorite Spider-Man. And one of the reasons why is actually pointed out in this book. Peter's self-hate and depression, while still being a superhero, is something that helped me get through the day, being a depressed person myself. And that is the Spider-Man I want to read. Like always, I have that entire run in trades.
I think Dan Slott understands that, though, because at the end of the book, when Otto and Peter are having that conversation in his head, and he's like, I realize that I'm not superior. Like, I've always pretended to be superior.
I did like that.
And then Peter like, he explains why Peter should be Spider-Man. He says, like, you're a genius, but you distance yourself from people. I thought he really
Yes, but all the stuff leading up to that, I never felt confident in Octo Peter. Like, I never once cared about Otto Octavius as Spider-Man.
Really?
I didn't feel...
Well, I don't know that you're necessarily supposed to care about him. I mean, I walked into this knowing that this was only going to last so long, and at a certain point, Peter Parker was going to be back.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I knew that too.
And this entire comic is essentially an amusement park ride where you're looking at every way that somebody who isn't Peter Parker can fuck up what Spider-Man is.
Yeah.
And you're watching him just tear Peter's life to hell. And, you know, it's that same kind of visceral enjoyment that you get out of something like Game of Thrones.
And I didn't enjoy that.
Well, I'm sorry.
Yeah. I think that it works in parts. I think there are some parts of the story that I'm not as huge a fan of. Like, I don't like the Venom arc that much.
I actually did like that one.
That Venom arc is a lot better if you've been reading Venom.
Yeah.
Which I had been.
Well, I read the early Flash Thompson Venom
The
stuff.
Remender Venom.
Yeah. I read that.
Yeah, and that was really good. And it took a hit when I think maybe it was Cullen Bunn took over.
It was Cullen Bunn. Yeah.
It wasn't as good,
yeah,
but it was still pretty good.
Yeah, I didn't read that. I read the early Remender stuff. I really like Flash Thompson as Venom. I just felt like that Venom arc, it felt kind of tacked on, and it was really clearly like, we're kind of killing a little bit of time before Goblin Nation.
Yeah.
I feel like that Venom arc could have been shorter. It was like 4 issues.
Was it 4?
I think it was like 3 or 4.
I thought it was 3, but maybe I'm wrong.
Maybe it was only 3. It just felt long. Because the whole
I really liked the Flash Thompson stuff. Him getting his legs, the symbiote sucked out of him, all that stuff. I thought that was great.
I really enjoyed it at the time. I'm not going to lie, rereading it for the podcast, I definitely skimmed through some issues.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, okay, yes, and they're talking and I know everything that's happening. And okay, like, let me get through this. But reading it, like, issue to issue, like, it felt really good and organic, and every issue ended with me going, okay, I can't wait to see what happens next.
Yeah, I really like the whole book, but
I guess for me, this book is a series of background character moments, because all the side characters I fucking loved.
Yeah.
But it was just Dr. Octopus being Spider-Man, it never hit home for me.
You never rooted for him ever?
No.
Man, I love the beginning because you feel like he's going to succeed. They just set you up with this huge false expectation of like, oh, he's going to come in and put all these spider bots together, and then that's really smart. And even Peter in his head's like, well, I don't know why I never thought of that. And he's like, well, I called for backup, and Peter's like, oh, I never thought of calling for backup.
He's doing all these great things. Like he's improving on Peter's tools. Like he's got a new spider suit. He's got better webbing. He's got like those little claw things. He's got those cool goggles, bug eyes that are in his fursuit that I really love.
Yeah.
Like as I said, he was used in other comics, and there's some artists who use those bug eyes to incredible effect.
Yeah.
Because those lenses actually flex.
Yeah.
If you notice, like sometimes they like flex down to like little circles.
Yeah. And
sometimes they're like big flat plates. And there's a lot of expressiveness that you can get out of those eyes.
Yeah, I think so too. I like his suit. I like all the modifications. I like that it feels like he's starting to do well. And then the minute he has to make the hard choices, the choices that were never difficult for Peter to make, like, do I kill this guy? How do I save this person? Like, when he kills Massacre, Peter, that's not a decision that Peter makes. Like, Peter made that decision a long time ago. Like, I don't kill people. I don't use guns.
Yeah.
And Otto has to make that choice for the first time. It was kind of like seeing a superhero be a superhero, really, for the first time. And when he has to save the brain cancer girl from getting hit by the train, when Peter comes back and it's just like, jump, like you have to jump. Like Peter doesn't have to think about that stuff.
Yeah.
Like, Otto is a different kind of hero. And I like the comparison between like a hero who's
actually the moment that him saying jump and Otto going forward. That was actually the moment where I was like, okay, this comic's cool. Peter's coming back.
Yeah.
This is awesome now.
Right, and I like the fact that it made you kind of work for it. Like, you had to wait for the moment when you were like, Peter's coming back.
Yeah.
Like, you're actually excited about it because he's been gone for, I mean, this comic ran like a year and a half. It's 31 issues, but it was coming out like every 2 or 3 weeks.
Yeah, it was coming out twice a month, I think.
Yeah, I thought it was twice a month. Like, when you actually, it's like, we haven't seen Peter in over a year.
Yeah.
Like, first he was a ghost, and then he was just gone.
Yeah.
And it's like, he's coming back. Oh, boy. Like, the moment when he puts the suit back on, the moment when the Green Goblin recognizes, like, it's him.
I love that scene. I never carried a man purse.
Yeah, but
I
we're
was
talking
laughing
about
so
issues
loud.
30 and 31 of 31 issues.
Right, like, I was laughing so loud at that final issue that my brother on the other side of the house was like, what's so goddamn funny?
Yeah. I thought issue 31, I think, was about the best send-off you could give that series.
Yeah.
I thought it was really cool. I like how he had a second artist, or a second writer, Christos
Gage,
right? Yeah.
Yeah.
He wrote the backup story that was kind of like Peter Parker getting his life back together. So he had
Christos Gage was doing plotting or scripting.
He was the writer of the annuals and...
Yeah, but he wrote
some of the team-up stuff.
The first, in issue 31, the first half is Dan Slott, and the second half is Christos Gage. Like, that's how they broke that up.
That makes sense.
And
but throughout the series, like, you see Christos Gage credited.
I know he was involved. And he's a really good Marvel writer, I think. But it was cool to see that wrap up the Peter issue, how he gets his life back together.
Yeah, I liked
good.
that.
And I'm excited to read Spider-Man again. The new Peter Parker Spider-Man.
I am definitely going to pick it up.
Spider-Man in like 6 years.
I'm excited to read Spider-Man 2099 coming in July.
Yeah,
because I haven't read that in 10 years.
Yeah, and there's so much
20
that
years.
I liked.
Excuse me.
Yeah, there's so much that I liked about this series that got set up in here that I'm really excited for to be on.
No, that's true.
Universe.
But like I said, that's like background character stuff.
Yeah, I mean,
because you've got the people at Parker Industries. Sajani is a great character. Anna Maria is a phenomenal character. In fact, one of my favorite characters to come out in a long time.
Oh, me too. She's one of my favorite characters in this whole series.
There's actually there's a lot of strong female characters in this book.
Well, yeah, you've got with Wraith, it was Detective Watanabe.
It's Captain Yuri Watanabe.
Yeah.
You've got Carly Cooper. You've got Mary Jane. You've got Anna Marie. You've got Sajani?
Yeah.
Sanjani or Sajani. I never say it right.
Yeah.
I think it was Sajani, so Sajani.
You've got a lot of female characters kind of bouncing around the nucleus of Spider-Man.
Yeah,
and the Black Cat show up,
right?
And I'm sure that's going to come back to haunt him.
Well, there's all this stuff that it's cool now because he doesn't know what happened for that year and a half or however long, in real time. Because it seems it was kind of a long time.
It was months.
Yeah,
I mean, there's one issue where it opens and it's 1 month later.
Yeah, 31 days later.
This is one of my least favorite parts about this whole series. Do you know what number that had on the front?
What's that?
It was 29 point now or whatever.
Yes.
Or 28 point now. And it had a giant fucking number 1 on the front of it.
Oh.
And it's in the last 6 issues of the whole series.
Because it says Goblin Nation number 1.
Yeah, but it said the 1 is in huge up in the top right.
And I had
Marvel.
Yeah.
I love so much that Marvel's doing right now.
Goblin Nation number 1.
Fuck you. Seriously, you're gonna put a number 1 on a book that's 26 issues into a series that you have to have read the first 25 for?
Well, in the blog post that I made 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
Or 2 weeks ago at this point. About the
renumbering
of comments. There's an issue of New Avengers where it's number 1 of nothing. It's issue 16 point now.
Yeah.
Number 1.
Right.
For no fucking reason.
Yeah, no.
I love what Marvel is doing on a creative level right now, but the way that they're handling their numbering is fucking atrocious.
Their collections department is really letting me down. Their how they're putting out the books is really letting me down. I used to like the big red bar at the bottom of every comic. That they do, but it's been going for several years. That's a good portion of cover that you're losing on there. It's all your books don't have to be that unified. You can still, but it's the same. That typeface for that number 1 is the same typeface for number 1 of actual new number 1 series. When Ghost Rider, all new Ghost Rider.
It's really confusing.
It's super fucking confusing. That's and to be honest, the goal of the comic book industry is not just to trick a reader into buying an issue. That's not how you get people to buy. That's not how you make money. It's to give people an issue that they're going to be happy with so that they come back. Because if that was someone's very first experience with reading a comic book ever, and you put a number 1 on and they bought it and they're like, I have no fucking idea what's happening. Looks like I'm never reading comics again.
Well, it's supposed to be a you can start here moment. Like, did you just go see The Amazing Spider-Man 2 in the theaters?
Yeah.
Do you want to buy a Spider-Man comic?
Yeah.
Buy this comic book. This is a good place for you to start.
And it's a lie.
It's like...
It's an actual lie.
It is. Well, it's like Game of Thrones, Season 3, Episode 8. Like, there's 4 episodes left in the season. Start here.
Yeah.
Are you fucking insane?
I hate that. I hate that Marvel is doing that right now. We talked about it on Top of the Stack, but it drives me absolutely... it drives me insane. The fact that the comic book industry has no faith in a person going, oh, I'll just pick it up at issue 742. Like,
you know how you get new readers into your book? You put out a goddamn paperback that says, Spider-Man, Volume 1, start reading fucking here.
Right. And just, like, the cost of the Marvel trade paperbacks is way high. It's super high right now. They're like 4 or 5 issues in those
Don't they start at like $17.99?
The hardcovers are $20, which come out like 3 months before the paperback too. So if you want to read the most current hardcover, it's like $20 for 4 issues.
Yeah.
Which, if you do the math, is actually more than the cover price of the single issues. You're supposed to be getting a deal.
That was actually the problem
trade.
I had when I was looking at the Lazarus first volume. Like, the issues are cheaper than the...
Well, it's Image, though, right? Lazarus?
Yeah.
It should be $10.
I respect the fact that comic books have a business model that they've been, like, trading on since comic books were actually sold on newsstands.
Right.
But the way that you get new readers isn't to sell them on your floppy issues that you put out every month. Like, no kid or even a casual reader is going to go, I'm going to go to the comic store every month and I'm going to start buying Spider-Man comics.
No, it's bullshit.
Like, they're going to go to a bookstore and they're going to go like, oh, I'm going to buy this Spider-Man book that goes on my bookshelf and I'm going to read this and then I'm going to read the next one. And then by the time they've read like 10 of those and they're like caught up, they're like, there are no more books. How do I get more books, Marvel? And Marvel goes, oh, well, we're putting out a monthly issue if you'd like to check that out.
Yeah, and I see that. I see that argument, but you look at it with manga, and it's like, people will wait. A television season takes 6 months off. People wait for the next season of television.
Yeah.
To say that, like, taking a break or having to wait for the next trade loses you readers is bullshit. It's bullshit. It's not accurate. And also...
Because as Netflix shows us, people will wait.
They wait.
To see it on Netflix rather than watch it on TV.
Well, and Netflix is actually using that business model to their advantage by releasing entire seasons of a show that they created at the same time. Like, when Arrested Development Season 4 came out, they didn't, like, release the episodes weekly. Like, they put all of it out at the same time. And I'm glad they did, because I watched it all in one sitting. And I think that that's, like, equivalent to the trade mentality is, like, Marvel, if you can put out 2 books a month, like you did with Spider-Man, that's 4 issues. That's a 4-issue trade every 2 months. So every 3 months, that's a 6-issue trade. Skip the single issues. Just put out a trade every 6 months. Put out a trade every 5 months.
I'm right there
with you. Put out a trade
you.
every 4 months. Like, if you have multiple artists on the book, which is what you're doing.
Actually, I thought of a better analogy.
What is that?
It would be like if Harry Potter was coming out 1 chapter at a time.
Yeah.
And each chapter was coming out once a month. And you got up to like, it's Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire, chapter 27, number 1.
Yeah. It's exactly like that. And it's also just, people will wait for this stuff.
Yeah.
You just have to give them. But the biggest problem in comic books, the absolute biggest problem in comic books is the price point. It's outrageous.
It really is.
And to charge more for your trade paperback than you're charging for your single issues is just asinine. It's the dumbest thing that Marvel has ever done.
Okay, so what it was
in their entire publication history.
Comixology is doing a sale right now on Eisner Award winners. And so their Lazarus...
Eisner Award nominees, yeah.
Yeah, sorry.
Not even just... that's a lot more books as nominees.
Yeah.
There's like a ton of books on sale at Image.
Yeah. And so like they have the first trade of Lazarus for $4.99, but they also have each single issue for 99 cents. So the first 4 issues that are in the trade is $4, but the trade is $5.
Yeah, that's weird.
It's like, why not just buy the single issues then?
Well, it's because Image does all their first issue, like the first trade paperback is $10. Like that's their price point on that, so half off, which is what the Eisner sale is, puts it at $4.99.
So are the issues normally $1.99?
No. Well, on Comixology?
Yeah.
Yeah. After a certain point, Image drops their back issues down.
Yeah, it's more expensive for volume 1 because it's a volume 1 that's being sold for 50% off.
Yeah.
If it was a volume 2, it would be
like $7.99 probably, right? Because they're like 15.
Well, they did have Saga Volume 1 $4.99, Volume 2 $5.99, Volume 3 $6.99.
Oh, and they do a Comixology and Image do like a sliding price scale. Once you go back far enough in Image, they're $1.99, and some of them are 99 cents. But I was talking to Eric Mannix about this, and it's like, really, if you want to get people to start reading comics, you have to give some of them away for free.
Yeah.
You have to give stuff away for free, and that's something that Marvel and DC will never do.
Well, I wonder at this point how much of the floppy sales are just driven by collectors.
Well, they're first driven by comic book stores because floppy sales don't count the number of people that bought the comic. They just
those are what are published. I'm sure that Marvel and DC have internal numbers that say exactly how many were sold
at comic book stores. No, they don't, because most comic book stores don't have a point of sale system. So like that information never goes back to DC and Marvel. There's actually zero information of like how many books are actually sold at comic book stores. Diamond did a big push for a while I was working in a comic book store to get everybody to use their proprietary point of sale software. Because comic book stores only sell Diamond products, right? Mm-hmm. Like, for the most part, that's true. But a lot of comic book stores don't. Like, they go through other distributors to get stuff like, I don't know, Gundam models or Magic cards. Like, there's lots of other distributors that you can go to get other items that you're going to sell. So that proprietary software is fairly useless for comic book retailers that sell more things than just what Diamond sells. But the whole push was a way for Diamond to like send information back to the companies to track how many actual books, like how many copies of Spider-Man, Superior Spider-Man number 17 are just still sitting in a long box in a comic book store, because no one knows. And every time Marvel and DC do some big like bullshit promotion to be like, we're going to sell all our books and we're going to sell out, like all they're doing is fucking over comic book stores, which is something that they pretend like they're saving. Like, it's very political. It's very much like, oh, we say one thing, we protect comic book stores, and then every marketing decision they make is directly fucking over comic book stores. Because comic book stores, unlike bookstores, cannot return unsold merchandise. Like in a bookstore, if you have all this extra product, like you can return that to the publishing house that like sold you too much.
Yep.
And that's how magazine stands used to work, and that's why they created the direct market, was so that magazine stands couldn't return a fuck ton of DC comics or Marvel comics to them. So now the retailers are like entirely financially responsible for every book that they buy. And it's a good business owner will know exactly how many books to order, but it's difficult when you have file customers that are like, oh, I want these books every month, and then they just don't show up. And, you know, a month will go by and you'll call them and they'll be like, yeah, I don't want any of those. And then you're like, okay, cool, I have a bunch of comics I need to put back out on the shelf. There's a few comic book stores out there right now that I really, really respect that are saying, we aren't shelving DC and Marvel books anymore. We'll order them for you, and we'll order exactly how many we need for our file customers, but we're not putting any else on the shelf. Like, if you come into our store, all that you see on the shelf are indie books. And, like, that's fucking ballsy. Like,
this is a whole other conversation, because I could start ranting about Diamond. Because Diamond makes it incredibly hard for new comics to get out there.
Yeah.
Because people need to pre-order it. And if it doesn't receive enough pre-orders, it's not gonna, like, Diamond won't ship it at all. Like, you have to hit a certain minimum threshold of pre-orders through previews.
Right.
Or, like, you know, if 490 people order your book through Diamond and it doesn't hit the 500 threshold or whatever it is, they then won't ship any of them.
Right.
They're just like, no, we're not going to do it. And so comic book shops, like, they're not going to order something just on spec because they can't return it. So they need a certain number of people to like want to pre-order it through previews.
Right. And how many
people, like through their file.
And how many people in the comic book industry that go to comic book shops weekly are aware enough to be like, hey, 3 months from now, I want a book I've never heard of before.
Well, let's put this out to our listeners for a second. Do you read previews every month and order comic books that are solicited 3 months in advance that you've never heard of, that you don't know the creators of?
That you only see the cover image of, which is often is like cover not final, or it's the whole reason why cover artists are not the same as interior artists like on small series like that, because they're going to pay a lot more for the cover artists to try to get people to order their book.
Right.
3 months in advance.
Like, just getting your book into a comic store can be a huge uphill struggle if you're just starting out.
Yeah, it's why like
it's completely asinine.
And, like individual, like personal distribution of your book is kind of the only way to get into comics if you've never worked on a comic before.
Yeah.
And it's
really sad.
Yeah, it is. And stuff like Comixology will make it easier. Like digital comic distribution will make it easier because if we're all at the same place.
Well, just
getting our
web comics in general will make it a lot easier because you can put your product out there and it can sell on its own merit.
Yeah, for sure.
Like, people can see it, they can get a sense of what you're about, and then they can make the decision to buy it or not based on understanding what your comic is actually about.
Yeah. Oh, I don't want to get too much into this because this is a good topic for Back Matter this week, possibly. But
I would definitely like to talk about that more on Back Matter.
This is the first year that a digital first comic has been nominated for Best New Series. That's the first time that's ever happened.
Which one is it?
High Crimes.
Okay.
Which is a great series, and you guys should all read it. But
I feel like somebody pitched that within the last 2 or 3 weeks.
I've been talking about it off the show.
Okay.
Because people have been telling me to read it, so I'm thumbing through it, and it's really good.
Okay, maybe I've just been hearing the name.
We met one of the creators at Comic-Con. I may have talked about that on that.
Okay, yeah, I think that was it.
Anyway, I think that marks a big change in like how people are thinking in the industry and stuff. So.
Okay, I did have a bunch more that I wanted to say about Spider-Man, though.
Me too.
Before we got super sidetracked.
We got super distracted, and I got mad.
Cade, was there anything else negative that you wanted to say about Spider-Man that you need to get off your chest, or was it mainly that you just you did not connect with Otto as a character?
I did not connect with Otto as a character, and I didn't like that. Like, okay, so I say issue 30 and 31 were good because that's Peter coming back, has some solid moments in it. I didn't like having to wade through the other stuff to get to that. Like, okay, for me it came down to, is Otto on the panel? And if yes, is the person he's interacting with a compelling character? And if not, I just did not care about that panel at all.
It's fair. It's funny because you call them all background characters. You know, you're like, oh, I love the background character stuff.
Well, side characters, I guess.
But that's the story to me, you know? Like, the story is like, yes, Otto moves in and punches the villain and then that happens. But, like, all the ramifications, everything that makes this story great to me is that every action has real-life consequences on Peter Parker's life.
No, that's true.
Everything that he does directly affects someone that is an awesome character. Because there's so many great side characters in this book that became the central focus for me reading it. It's like the goofy stuff with him, like creating robots and having henchmen and stuff, like really made me laugh and was like the fun part of the book. And the action, I think they got some incredible artists to work on this series.
Yeah, that's actually one of the things I wanted to talk about. Is just what is it?
Humberto Ramos.
Yeah, Humberto Ramos's his panel work.
It's
because there was Giuseppe something or other who was the other.
There were actually a lot of.
There were a lot of artists.
There were a number of fill-in artists, but there was one guy in particular, Giuseppe Camuncoli. Camuncoli, who was like the main other artist. When Ramos wasn't on it.
Yeah.
And I liked Giuseppe's artwork better as a general rule, but I loved Ramos's panel work in this one. Like, his panels are so dynamic, especially coming off of reading The Dark Knight Returns, where it's this fucking 16-panel grid that is never goddamn deviated from.
Right.
Like, it felt incredibly static to me. And so jumping into this, it's like, oh my God, this is so fucking crazy. Like, the panels are going goddamn everywhere.
Yeah.
It was super cool, and I loved the way that it looked. Like, it made the comic feel like super action-y just right off the bat.
I love how fluid everything looks, like how it looks like it's in motion so much of the time. I really like that.
Yeah, it can be really hard to just show on the panel like how dynamic Spider-Man is, like the way that he moves.
Yeah.
Some of those panels I actually had a problem with, but it was mainly because, like, his leg being behind his arm up in the air, bent the wrong way, looked weird.
Oh, that's Todd McFarlane to the nth degree.
That's
classic
Spider-Man.
If you like Spider-Man in the 90s, like, that's all he was fucking doing.
And some of his webs look like that as well, which drove me batshit crazy. But sorry, what I was saying about the story, like, you saw those as the main moments. Yeah. I didn't. I saw Otto trying to be the superior Spider-Man as the core storyline.
But it takes such a backseat to, like, you'll have one or two panels where Otto will be like, and now I'm fighting a villain, or I'm doing a thing. You had equal number, if not more, panels about...
True, but like in every fucking issue, he's like, because I am the superior Spider-Man, or I will be the superior Spider-Man. What he's trying to do,
but he's failing in every panel, and that's like what makes it compelling to me. Is like, you feel like he's on track, you feel like he's got everything going, and then my favorite arc in the whole story is the the breakout with the spider.
Yeah.
I love that. It was so good because it was the first time you see him just like cross the line in a way that he hadn't yet before. Because murdering a villain who is massacring a bunch of people is one thing, but like premeditated murder via blackmail of the mayor is like something completely different. And I was like, oh man, this is getting out of control. Totally. And then right after that, he's like, I want the island. I'm ordering henchmen. And you're like, what the? This is actually villain shit. You know?
Can I start to go into my whole thing with the comic?
Yeah.
Because this actually ties in really neatly with what I wanted to say. Because I love this comic on about 4 different levels. Mm-hmm. I had 4 when I was talking to my brother about it earlier. Hopefully I can remember what all of them are. But one of the things I really loved about this was just the way that it works as like classic comic book storytelling.
Yeah.
So many superhero comics now like get very, very deep into like the big story arc where each issue is like building up to this epic confrontation. Uncanny X-Force was like that for me a lot. Like a lot of Remender's work is very like tight building narrative.
Bendis feels like that to me too.
Bendis
like,
feels that way. Hickman
Jason
feels
Aaron.
that way. Jason Aaron.
A lot of the big guys at Marvel, that's how they write.
And this is very much like classic episodic superhero storytelling.
Oh
like,
yeah,
you've got the big arc, which is the Superior Spider-Man thing, but you've got all of these little like 2 and 3 issue arcs with like all of these like subplot lines going on with all the background characters, and he's interacting with different people, and it feels like the classic Spider-Man that I grew up with in like the late 80s and early 90s.
And I think this is definitely a byproduct of when Dan Slott started writing the book. It was weekly. It was 3 times a month.
Yeah.
And it was
they had been publishing 3 or 4 different Spider-Man titles that were coming out each week.
Right.
And at a certain point they're like, we're just going to call them all Amazing Spider-Man.
Well, yeah, everything was canceled and they started over with Brand New Day. And so it came out 3 times a month and it would have different creative teams on different issues.
Right.
But it meant that the creative teams had to kind of do these smaller arcs. And I think that works really well for a character like Spider-Man.
Yeah, I mean, I think that Spider-Man has largely been about his expanded cast for a really long time.
Yeah.
The friends, the villains, the ups, the downs. Like, it felt incredibly reminiscent of the Spider-Man that I grew up with, which I thought was really interesting because he's a completely different Spider-Man. But you still needed a
compelling Spider-Man.
But I hate Spider-Man. Like, I hate Peter Parker.
And see, that's the thing is
like, if you really love Peter Parker, like, I don't think this story's for you because Peter Parker is not in this book. Like, this is not a book about Peter Parker Spider-Man.
Yeah, like, I found Otto incredibly compelling because you could see his hubris. Like, you could see him building up to, like, he was pulling classic supervillain moves. Like, I'm going to have a base of operations with henchmen. Like,
spying on the whole city and...
Yeah, but it didn't feel like Spider-Man.
The second, that's the thing is the second level on which this book really worked for me is on the level of superheroes as legacy characters.
Yeah.
Because Otto is not Peter. He doesn't think like Peter. He doesn't move like Peter. He doesn't do the things that Peter would do. And we get to see a Spider-Man who isn't Peter Parker.
It's like Miles Morales.
Yeah, it's especially great to compare it to Miles Morales because Miles Morales is very much a spiritual successor to Peter Parker.
But Miles Morales
as Spider-Man, like he
more
tells
compelling.
Joe. Yeah, well, he is a very compelling character, but that's the thing is that this is a deconstruction of the superhero legacy character where you're getting somebody who is not a heroic hero in the Spider-Man suit, and you're seeing exactly how much damage he can do to the legacy of Spider-Man.
Yeah, they've done this before in DC with like a couple of the characters that didn't work out, really.
Azrael?
Like, Azrael is a great example. I'm reading through all of 90s Batman right now. I just finished reading Cataclysm. That'll tell you where I'm at. But Azrael's a piece of shit, and he's a terrible, terrible character. I'll go on record as saying I don't care who likes Azrael. But he is such a byproduct of the 90s, where it's like, we'll take Batman and we'll dial him up to 11 and he'll be badass. And it's like, well, Batman, what made Batman cool was totally different stuff. But you got to see a character like try to adopt the legacy and fail, because Azrael calls himself Batman for a while. When Bruce's back is broken in Nightfall, like Azrael becomes Batman. It's a completely
I had actually forgotten about that.
Yeah, it's a completely different experience than when we get later on with Dick becoming Batman.
Dick Bat.
Yeah, it's you know, and it's Tim calls him like Asbat or something in the book, which makes me laugh really hard. But you know, like I like the idea of someone trying to take up the mantle of someone else and failing.
Well, it's not even that he fails, it's that he takes an entirely different approach to being Spider-Man than Peter does.
Yeah.
And we get to see how important Peter Parker really is to who Spider-Man is and what he does.
Well, and New York in general. Like,
yeah,
as a
like
city.
you get to see all of the effects of somebody who isn't Peter Parker being Spider-Man, and the way that influences everybody in this web around him.
Yeah.
Like, and I think that the comic book is incredibly interesting just on that level.
And like
I should say that looking at this critically, this is a phenomenal series. I was going to start out with that and I completely forgot, because if I look at every issue critically, this is a very well done book.
Yeah.
And deserves to sell well. And, you know, Dan Slott should be praised for that. The artist should be praised for that. Yeah. I just didn't care about the main character, and for me that can be a huge detriment to the book.
Yeah, I think it's hard if you want this to be Peter, if you want this to be quote-unquote Spider-Man, but it's not Spider-Man. This is the superior Spider-Man. He has a different tool set, he has a different costume.
Well, yeah, but Miles Morales is a different Spider-Man, and yet that Spider-Man is still compelling.
Well, I think that this character is compelling too. I think that just because he's a villain doesn't make him not compelling. Like, I'm almost more compelled by villains.
I didn't care about him. There was...
Why, though? I mean, he's got such a great arc when it comes to, like, finding out what it means to be in someone's life.
Like, a lot of the things for me that make a character compelling is knowing things about their backstory, knowing why they did things. And in this series, it did that, but it was too late. It wasn't until Peter came back and started going through his memories that we're finding out what makes Otto tick.
Yeah.
And before we had that, there was just no reason for him to be doing these things.
I totally disagree. Like, I love the...
Well, except for the fact that he's a supervillain and that he's trying to get back at Peter, and, like... I mean, there was a reason, but there wasn't a personal connection.
That is actually something else that I wanted to get into, and it's actually based on an article that somebody wrote back in, like, November. So, somewhere in, like, halfway through the series. Mm-hmm. And it's talking about the difference between Peter and Otto. And one of the big, like, classic things with Spider-Man is that, or I guess with Peter Parker, is that his problems are the problems of a young man.
Yeah.
Like, he's trying to balance his work and his personal life. He's having girl problems. He has employment problems. Like, he doesn't know if he's going to have enough money to stay in his apartment month to month. Like, he is very much grounded in the problems of somebody who is facing life for the first time.
Yeah.
And that's not Otto's character.
And yet
which made awesome sense 30 years ago.
Well, some of my favorite Spider-Man was early Straczynski, where he was married to Mary Jane. He was a school teacher. He had kind of a good life. Yeah. And yet still, he was a depressed individual, and he hated himself and was always trying to fix the world to make up for that.
But the article that I read, it's on a website called thenerdcave.com by Chase Magnette. And it's called The Middle-Aged Spider-Man. And it's talking about how Otto is basically, he's the middle-aged superhero, and all of his problems are the problem of somebody like on the cusp of a midlife crisis. Mm-hmm. And he talks about like how the first thing that he encounters as Spider-Man is the Sinister Six, an organization that he founded that has moved past him. And like he just sees them as copycats who aren't worthy of his legacy. And he runs into Stunner, his ex-girlfriend who he's moved past. And he like
his old schoolmate, his old classmate.
Yeah. Like he has lived a life of failure where every aspiration that he has had has turned to ashes. And he's like now middle-aged and he's looking at his life and he's going, what has all of this come to? What have I accomplished?
Right.
And so he's going into a midlife crisis where he's like, no, I'm going to be Spider-Man. I'm going to be I'm going to be the best Spider-Man that there's ever been. And I'm going to totally show Peter Parker that I can be way better than he ever was.
Well,
it's very much a reversal of the classic Spider-Man character.
And a lot of the resentment of Otto is revealed in those last issues where it's like Peter's realizing that he and Otto aren't so different. But Otto had a terrible upbringing. Like, Otto had everything good. Like, nothing good happened to Otto when he was a kid. And Peter remembers his childhood so fondly. Like, things didn't start to go wrong for Peter, I mean, aside from the death of his parents, until Uncle Ben dies. And he gets bitten by the spider. Like, Otto's life is awful. And a lot of Otto's resentment is he's like, how can Peter have his life in such disarray when he has everything going for him? He doesn't even have to try. He's
yes, like but I wish that they had done that near the beginning.
They did do that near the beginning. That's exactly what he's thinking at the beginning when he's trying to get back with Mary Jane. Is he's like, how is this life disorganized? Like, how can he not?
Okay, well, we didn't see Otto's background of the child abuse, all that stuff. I wish that had been at the beginning so that we understand.
Yeah, I think that would have been really front loaded.
It's too tropey too. Like we've seen that before. We've seen a villain who's like, my life is terrible because I had a shitty childhood, which is like can create people with problems, but like a lot of people that had shitty childhood went on to do very successful things. So I think that what that shows later on in the book is that like Otto's problems are not the problems of his childhood. They're the problems of his failures. And his failures are the problems of him thinking that he's superior when he's not. That's his problem, is like, I'm so much better than everyone else. And he's not really. Like, he could use the help of other people, and because he won't accept their help, like, that's why he's constantly in trouble. That's
I mean, he was by no stretch of imagination a hero, but he had the most heroic death I guess I could imagine for him, in that he sacrificed himself for other people.
For the woman he loved.
Yeah, and like, he acknowledged, like, I did some terrible things, but
once again, we're looking at the last 2 issues of the series.
But that's the conclusion of the story.
Yeah.
Like, those last 2 issues, if those had been the first 2 issues, this would have been a terrible book.
No, that's true. Like, the book leading up to it does matter.
It's payoff for all of that. Like, it makes all of that even more worth it.
And I'm not sure that it does.
I feel like the Otto's past life scenes are only significant and meaningful in that you can see the reflections of the horrible person he is in them.
Right.
And if you hadn't had 25 issues building up to that, it wouldn't have had the impact that it does. Like,
I mean, that's fair.
You've had like a year plus being in Otto's head, like listening to him think, watching him move, watching him do all of these things.
Yeah, and the stuff that he thought about, I didn't care about. Like, I guess,
like I know, like I recognize what you're saying, and I know what it's like to have a series lose me and never be able to get back into it.
I mean, this one I did get back into, because I felt that, I mean, the last 2 issues are redeeming. I don't know. Okay, I actually have a list of the most awesome moments of the book that I felt. And maybe that can
remind me, because I'm going to forget. But I have, I want to talk about why this series is successful based on like how it came out, and not about like what's in the book. So remind me to talk about that, because I'll forget.
Well, I just wanted to kind of mention as my 4th point before we get into what Cade really liked about the book. Is just the way that in superhero stories so often you get that this is going to change everything moment.
Yeah.
It never ends up changing anything.
Right.
And I feel like Slott did an incredibly good job creating a situation where you can have lasting consequences for Spider-Man, where Otto had months where he was just fucking up every relationship that Peter Parker has in his life, both as Peter Parker and as Spider-Man.
Yeah.
And then he wiped all of it out. So Peter doesn't even remember all of the things that he did.
Right.
Yeah,
and
like
now
in
you
the
have
end
a
where he
position
says, my office? I have an office?
Yeah. And so now you have Peter in a position where you could actually have like legitimate change in Spider-Man's life because he's suddenly having to deal with all of these things that Spider-Man did.
You have a significant change in the fact that like Mary Jane is now completely out of his life.
Yeah.
And I think that is a change for the better.
I do too.
And I wish that they had done something like that fucking 7 years ago.
Oh, yeah.
Instead of Magic Devil Man makes the bad marriage go away. Actually had like Peter and Mary Jane like go through shitty times and get divorced like adults.
Yeah.
And Aunt May should have died, which could have triggered more
Aunt May should have died like
depression
20 years ago. She's
I'm not arguing with you.
800 years old in this book. And they give her nanotechnology, so now she's goddamn immortal. Like, we're never going to get rid of Aunt May. I hate her so much as a character. Like, I cannot begin to express how fucking annoying she is as a character. Because also she points out everything I hate about the Spider-Man story, which is, like, the infinite number of retcons and resets we have. The Aunt May in Ultimate Spider-Man was so much more compelling because at some point shit changed. Like, she found out about Peter Parker.
Yeah.
The fact that Peter Parker is a grown-ass adult and still cannot tell his Aunt May that he's a superhero.
Well, she did know.
Ridiculous. She used to know, and they retconned it out.
Yeah, because Straczynski's run that I loved, she knew.
I like Straczynski's run, but there's so much fucking bullshit in that run.
No, that's true.
It makes me angry about halfway through it. I'm like, I'm done with this. I can't make it through all 10 trades. I can't. I'll get through like the 6th one, and I'm like, fuck this series.
So, Cade, what moments did you really like in this series?
Okay, the return of the phrase Crazy Town Banana Pants.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that was like a thing that went back.
It was a long time ago that he used to say that.
Yeah.
Back before they could actually swear in comic books.
I like that was in there, and then in the next panel, Mary Jane's saying it.
I know, and then she's
like, what? And it's like, it's something Peter used to say.
Yeah. I loved the Spidey signal and that scene with the whole test thing. Like, I didn't like what ended up happening with it, with the whole vulture.
Yeah.
But, no, like, the Spidey signal appearing and him showing up and talking to Jonah, and that was an awesome scene.
Yeah.
I loved that. I cried. I was tearing up at the pink penguin that the little girl gives Spider-Man after...
Yeah. That was
Dr. Spidey was awesome.
That's something I wanted to talk about earlier, too, when you were saying that, like, the character, you don't understand the motivations of the character because you're not seeing into Dr. Octopus, you don't see the, like, childhood stuff from him. That moment is one of the first moments in when you actually, like, realize something about Otto in a big way, is, like, he's never received a thank you before. Like, a thank you gift before in his life. Like, think of all the times that, like, Peter's saving people on the street, and they're like, oh, thank you, Spider-Man, I love you so much. Like, all of that, all of the fact that, like, Peter knows he's a hero and people are happy and, like, are alive because of him, like, Otto's never had that because he's a villain. And so the fact that he keeps that penguin and is like, you start to think that he'll actually be, like, it's part of the build-up into thinking that he'll actually be good at being a hero. Which makes the tearing of it down, like, all the more heartbreaking. And also just the heartbreak that, like, Peter will never be with Anna Marie again.
Yeah, I'm actually, in my head, I'm like, oh my god, how is he going to break this to her?
And that's why I'm super fucking excited for ASM #1.
Yeah, I think it's going to be great because he's set up so much in this. I can't wait till Black Cat comes back and, like, that whole shit show goes down. I can't wait until...
I wasn't actually impressed with the Black Cat.
Really?
Arc in this.
See, I love it. He shows up on the rooftop and she's like... what's up, lover? And then he, like, punches her in the face, and he's like, I'm apprehending a criminal. It's what I always do. Like, I just love his I'm pretending to be a hero, like, monologues. They're so great.
I think, yeah, but she could have kicked his ass, and I didn't like that.
He has spider powers.
Yeah, I mean, she was not expecting him to, like, go all out.
True.
Yeah.
I felt it was kind of a letdown for Felicia Hardy's character.
She's not better than... She cannot beat Spider-Man in a fight.
Besides, there was that moment, I think after this, where Daredevil and Black Cat were kissing on the rooftop and Spider-Man is nearby and he's like, I think this is my supervillain origin.
Oh, I thought that was
Maybe.
I thought that was Peter still.
Maybe it is.
No, it can't be.
I don't think so.
It's Superior Spider-Man. It's in the Daredevil. It's in the Mark Waid Daredevil run.
Yeah.
I read it a while ago. It's like vaguely.
Yeah, well, I mean, it seems like it's Peter.
I don't remember.
But I don't know. It's been a while since I read that issue. Joe would remember.
Yeah, it's been a long time since I read that Daredevil stuff. But yeah, no, I like that stuff. I thought that was good.
I just think Felicia Hardy's a badass and should have.
But she's also she has no powers.
Well, okay, so I only know her origin from the Amazing Spider-Man cartoon from the 90s, where she had like a derivative of the super soldier serum. Is that not her origin in the comics? Is she just like an acrobat?
Yeah, she's like Catwoman.
Yeah.
Okay, I thought she had like...
In fact, she is Catwoman.
I thought she had like limited super strength and agility and stuff.
There have been times when she's had it, yeah, but...
I'm going to look it up while you keep talking.
Because, I mean, she was infused with the Venom for a while, but,
they don't use her like that. Like, as far as everything that I've read with her, they've never, like, implied that she has any powers.
Yeah, no.
As far as I know, but...
She was Catwoman. She was literally Catwoman.
Yeah.
Well, figuratively Catwoman.
Yeah.
She's literally figuratively Catwoman.
Yeah.
There we go. Spider-Man 2099. I am super excited for that.
Yep.
And it was incredible writing in this book on that front.
That was a really good arc, too.
Well, yeah, and that he kept coming back. Like, he was always there in the shadows, like... And somebody's like, we don't have time for this. You have no idea. What? Nothing.
Yeah.
Like, Spider-Man 2099 being there, it was awesome.
Yeah, I really like that too. I also like that once you get the reveal of what Green Goblin's face looks like in this one, what Norman Osborn's had his face like resurgery. Now this time reading through it, I noticed how many fucking panels that guy is in. With the weird handlebar mustache.
Really?
He's in a ton of the fucking
I forgot
book.
about it and, like, wasn't looking for it.
Anytime they're at
Alchem.
Anytime Alchem's brought up, like, that's when he's introduced. Like, he's in the limo with Normie. Like,
okay.
From that point on, anytime they're at that chemical company or anything, I'm always looking for him because he's in most of those panels.
God, now I want to go back and flip through it all again.
That was the most fun rereading it, was looking for that guy's face.
Well, I know one day I will reread this along with all of Dan Slott's Spider-Man and the new stuff that I'm super excited for.
Okay, so real quick. Originally the Black Cat had no powers.
Okay.
Then she got psychic bad luck powers.
Okay.
Then Doctor Strange took those away and gave her cat powers for a little bit until she got the bad luck powers back.
Cat powers, like, that's a thing, right? That's a person? Cat powers?
Well, she's got night vision, retractable talons, superhuman speed and strength, agility, endurance, proportionate to a cat. And then she lost those again, and eventually she got cybernetic powers that increase her agility, heighten her strength. She has earrings that interact with the balance center of her brain to give her enhanced agility, contact lenses that see in infrared and ultraviolet, and her costume has micro servos that enhance her strength. So she's got your general, like, I'm superhuman
bullshit powers. This is part of the reason why I hate Spider-Man, is because there's like 4 billion retcons. Spider-Man...
That is every comic.
No, I feel like Spider-Man is the most retconned comic. It's up there. If it's not
Well,
X-Men,
that is also because it is one of the longest running.
Yeah, but if it's not X-Men,
I think X-Men is way worse.
It's got to be Spider-Man.
It is way worse.
They're both really bad. It's my huge problem with the sliding timeline is, like, you have so many stories that just, like, get swept under the rug because it's like, oh, well, we're going to move in a different direction with this now.
Yeah.
Like, I like Marvel right now, but Marvel has never really been my universe. I liked X-Men because I watched the cartoon show, and so I bought X-Men comics. But the DC universe is so much more compelling to me. And that's why when Peter, well, not in the New 52, but when Peter, left and it was Otto Octavius, it was like, I'm reading that series. I haven't read Spider-Man in 6 years. Like, I'm going to read that because it's a status quo change. It's like things are actually going to be different for once. I've seen Peter Parker be Spider-Man for the entirety of my life.
Yeah.
He's always been, like, as far back as I can remember, I remember watching the animated series of Spider-Man. And even before that, I remember watching the live action.
I watched Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends when I was like 3 or 4 years old.
I remember that too. Like
that was my first introduction to superheroes.
There's not a time in my life that I can remember that doesn't include Peter Parker as Spider-Man. And I mean, you can say the same thing about Bruce Wayne and Clark Kent as Superman, but...
No, you can't. Bruce Wayne hasn't always been Batman.
And that's I guess that's the difference, is like there have been times when it wasn't, and I have stuff like Batman Begins, and I have the different iterations of the Batman comics.
And that one time that Superman was blue.
And that one time the Superman was blue and also red and had a mullet and was made of lightning powers.
Yeah. It was weird.
It
was in the 90s.
What were they thinking? I love 90s DC, but...
Have you read, oh God, what's it called? Sovereign 7.
Maybe? What is that?
That's the Chris Claremont series that he came up with for DC in the 90s, where he owned all the characters. And they were all like kings and queens from alternate realities that had superpowers, and Power Girl was in it.
Nope. I did not
read
that
my God.
one. I'm definitely going to go down with that.
I think that you'll like this comic.
I think I will too.
It was kind of terrible, but I think you'll like it.
Yeah, I like shit like that. I did want to talk about really quickly, like, why I think this is so successful and such a huge... It gives me a lot of faith for Marvel. But go through your list.
Yeah, I only have a few more.
Okay.
So Anna Marie.
Yeah, she's great.
Phenomenal character, and I really hope to see more of her. I mean, obviously not in a relationship with Peter.
What if Peter learns to like her? Like, he doesn't even know her. He's never met her.
I mean, that's true, and that may be where it's going, and we'll have to see, but...
Like, maybe he tries to break it off slowly, and then is like, oh, actually, she's really cool. I'll hang out with her more. Like, you just don't know.
Well, she's also a junior partner at Parker Industries.
Yeah,
right.
And I hope to see her a lot more in that role. Like, I think that she's a phenomenal character, and I hope she goes more places. And she's a complete badass, as we saw in that last issue.
Oh, yeah. I love that Peter's like, if I know anything about this person, I know that they can take care of themselves, and gives her the means to escape.
Yeah.
Like, that's so good.
That was phenomenal. I loved that.
Yeah.
I love the way that they referenced Gwen Stacy's death, and he's like, I have practiced for this moment.
Yeah, I kind of think they over-referenced it, because there's like lots of references to Gwen Stacy's death in that book.
Yeah, they kind of kept
there's
dropping
that, and there's the moment
the
that Otto grabs little Normie. He spiderwebs his face and pulls him by his face. And Peter's like, you can't do that!
Yeah. Yeah, no, there's lots of references to Gwen in this, and
part of that is because the new movie coming out.
And although I like it, it's like...
Well, I like the fact that she is kind of a presence in the book.
Yeah.
Even though she's dead, and she's been dead for a long time. Like, her existence still has weight.
Well, and it's something that Otto never experienced, and it was a defining moment in Peter Parker becoming Spider-Man.
Yeah, I mean, they talk about that at the beginning of the Goblin Nation storyline when he's looking at the bridge, and like and you're looking through Peter's memories, and it's like, this has special significance between Peter and Norman.
Right.
Like the big goblin logos on the George Washington Bridge.
Right. And I like that. I just feel like we've told a lot of stories about the Gwen Stacy death thing. I love Spider-Man Blue, and I feel like that's all I'll ever need.
Yeah. I haven't actually read Spider-Man Blue.
It's fantastic.
It is amazing.
It's my favorite of the Color series.
If I could find it, I'd loan you my copy.
Super good.
Okay.
What else you got, Kate?
But wait, that's by Jeff Loeb, isn't it?
It's the Jeff Loeb Tim Sale Color series, which
makes me trepidatious.
It was when Jeff Loeb was writing really good stuff, though.
Okay.
Because it was like not that long after Long Halloween.
Okay.
Yeah, and this was Jeff Loeb Marvel, not Jeff Loeb DC.
Well, Jeff Loeb Marvel is my least favorite. Red Hulk.
Yeah, I'm really not a Loeb fan in general.
I don't like Hulk.
I don't remember Red Hulk.
Continue with your list.
Okay, so Anna Marie, badass character. Another badass female, Mary Jane in issue 28.
No, when she gets to use the webs.
When she brings out the webs and becomes a total fucking badass. And her firefighter boyfriend's like, what the hell? And she's like, deal with it.
She's like, this isn't a game. And she's like, yes, it is. This is a game to the Green Goblin. I've played it before. I'm going to take all the pieces off the board. And I was like, that's dope. Like, that was dope.
Yeah.
I love that.
And the way that she like her boyfriend was like, need an explanation. And she's like, no, deal with it.
Yeah.
And it was like, fuck yeah, Mary Jane, you go, girl.
Yeah, I liked it too. I do the moment where they stop in the car and he's like, I'm a firefighter. I should have probably stayed behind and helped. I was like, yeah, maybe you should have.
Yeah, maybe you should have thought about that.
Because you just drove off with your girlfriend. Like, that's not going to look good. Do you, police captain? What happened? Oh, my girlfriend got attacked by goblins and we ran away.
Yeah, you and everyone else in the city.
Yeah. But that moment was great. Like, the minute that panel happens where she's got the web shooters, it was like, yes, so good.
Yeah, I was like redeeming for all the shit that Mary Jane goes through in this book.
Yeah, I hate Mary Jane's character for a lot of this book. Like, I don't like Mary Jane that much, period. But I definitely don't like her in this book when she's like her club is burning down and she's just sitting on the floor and she's like, Peter will come save us.
That was
fuck
stupid.
you, Mary Jane. Like, get off your ass.
Yeah, and then
not my favorite.
My last thought was just like Otto submitting to Peter. That moment was powerful.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, it sucked that I had to wait that long for such a powerful moment, but it was good.
I feel like a lot of its power was based on how long it took. Especially if you were reading issue to issue.
I'm kind of with Cade, though. I feel like as much as I really, really like this series, I do kind of feel like it's a little bit long.
I don't agree.
Like,
I think it's exactly as long as it needs to be.
I think that there could have been more important, powerful beats throughout the storyline. I don't like that so much of the good parts of the series were packed in the last 2 issues.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like there's a fair amount in most of the arcs. I do feel like some of the arcs are stronger than others. Like, I really, really like the Spider Slayer arc, and I really like the arcs at the beginning when he's, like, defeating the Superior Six... Or not Superior Six, the Sinister Six, which would go on to be the Superior Foes of Spider-Man team.
They really should have just called themselves the Superior Six.
Which would have been great. And
it's the Sinister Six
which
of a
I
new
forgot
generation.
that's where he got the living... what's the robot?
The Living Brain.
The Living Brain, the robot. I forgot that was the 6th member of the Sinister Six before... the Superior Foes when they didn't have 6 members. I forgot about that.
Yep.
And then I love it when he's fighting it's not Speedball, but it's like
Speed Demon.
Speed Demon. No, not the one that's in the Sinister Six. The one that they're videotaping. It's the Jester.
Oh, it's Jester and
Powerball?
No.
It's something like that.
Hold on a second.
Yeah.
I'll find it.
I liked those arcs because it was like setting up him as a failure.
For me, like, there were a couple of strong arcs, but for me, a strong arc, he needs to learn something. Like, there needs to be... It can't just be like, oh...
Screwball.
That's what it was. Thank you.
It can't just be like, oh, there's a villain, I need to beat them. There has to be something powerful in the arc that happens to a character.
I would love if that were true, but in Marvel...
It's true for most comic books.
In Marvel and DC, I think that's far and away the exception to the rule. Like, I feel like most of this comic is very much serialized mainstream comics, and I still like it, but it will never hold a candle to independent comics.
I guess I should say, before I got out of comics, that was the big thing in most comic books, is each arc, there was something powerful that happened.
I totally disagree.
Yeah, this is very much about, like, the ongoing serialized nature of the story.
But I feel like he does...
Like, there's no beginning and there's no ending. It's just... something happens, and then something happens after that.
And I feel like he's learning stuff. And I don't know when you got out of comics, but, like, I feel like for so long, comics books were just like, and then this happened.
It was
and then
Spider-Man the Other, and...
But that's a miniseries.
Well, no, that's when I got out.
Oh, okay.
But, like, each of the Spider-Man trades before that, there was always something that happened, whether it was, like...
Is this just Straczynski stuff again?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was like, okay, so like one of the arcs had Ezekiel in it, and he learned something, a new way to use his stuff, like
right.
something he had never tried before.
This is the whole, like, the spider gods extra powers thing.
Yeah, the other powers that he gets.
Well,
but I really feel
this was before that.
Yeah, but Ezekiel's the whole reason that got
Yeah,
introduced.
he's teaching him about the spider totem.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the thing is that I think that Straczynski's run is really the exception rather than the rule. Like, what he was doing was very different from what other people had done with Spider-Man.
That's true. But, like, the Ultimate books were doing that, too. Like, each arc in the Ultimate books, there was a moment. A powerful
but that's a brand new universe. Like, those are new characters.
And I would argue that that's not always true, because some of those Ultimate books, like, there is cool stuff going on. Some of those Ultimate books feel more like this
like,
to me.
it doesn't have to be with the main character, though. It can be with somebody else.
I think it would be hard to look at 3 issues of this series in which somebody didn't learn something or something powerful didn't happen to a character.
I found arcs where I didn't care about people.
I think that Otto grew and changed a lot over the course of the series.
I think you not caring what happened to the characters is not the same thing as nothing happened to them.
Okay, no, that's...
Because you guys will read books. You guys say that a lot on the show, where you'll be like, nothing happened, and I'm like, the fucking tons of shit happened in this book.
I should say that...
Like, if it didn't have impact with you is one thing, is like, how could it have been carried out?
It needs to make me feel something. There needs to be something in each arc that makes me feel like, oh my god, this is a really good moment. The Pink Penguin is a good example. That arc had that payoff.
Right.
I am pleased.
Yeah, but
like, the rest of the arc could have been crap. And there were some arcs in the story where I didn't feel that.
Well, I mean, I think that it's a lot to ask a writer to make you emotionally connect with the book when you have more control over whether or not you emotionally connect with the book than they do. It's like you have to choose to be emotionally connected to something. You have to give up your ability to, like...
But you know that I was trying, because there's moments throughout the series where I'm like, these are awesome.
I'm not saying that you're not.
It's because I was trying to care about it, and I didn't always.
I think in general, though, it's something that if you want to feel connected to a character, you just have to feel connected to the character. And if you choose to not buy into the world or what the writer... Like, you can give up a lot of emotional... You can become vulnerable to a character's emotions.
I don't think that you can necessarily choose to like or dislike a character.
No, I don't.
Like, that's not a choice that you make.
I don't think so either, but I think that you can open yourself up to be more vulnerable.
I'm not really sure that it's something that you can affect in that way. And I've like I said before, I've been where Cade is on different books, and I recognize there is a difference between I didn't like this book,
right,
and this is a bad book.
Yeah, I'm not saying it's a bad book. I already said if I look at this critically, it is a great book.
Well, it's why I have a lot of problems with critics, like, in general, is, like, not only are they looking at, like, did I like it, not whether or not is it well done, it's also, like, how much did I like it? Is it a 7 out of 10? Is it, like, I find rating systems to be irrelevant because... Like, how are you quantifying this?
Yeah,
like,
and that's why I'm not giving this a rating. I'm saying that if I look at it critically, if I look at Dan Slott's writing, it's great.
Yeah.
There were a lot of things he did, characters he created, some of the characters that he didn't create that were more well-written than I've ever seen them. Mm-hmm. I mean, when I look at this critically, this is a great book.
Yeah.
If I look at how this made me feel and how much I liked it, I think it falls short.
I mean, it's fair.
And that is, I mean, yes, part of that is on me. That is me not liking the book for certain reasons, not me not liking the book because it's bad.
That's fair. And I don't want to cut you off, but I know that Chard did want to say one thing about the...
like why I think this is successful.
Yeah, why you think it's successful. And we're turn this into another goddamn 2-hour-long episode.
Oh, we aren't. We're not even in an hour yet.
I thought okay, well, in any case, let's not just go over the same points over and over again.
The one thing that I do think is while you may not have connected with every emotional arc or character arc in this book, I think that one thing that I really enjoyed about the book was that it felt like somebody was changing in one way or the other in every issue. Like some progress was being made, And it felt refreshing because I feel like that isn't always the case in most serialized comics. Like, I often feel like it's like, oh, I have to wait 6 issues before significant change takes place.
Yeah, and part of that is a strength of Dan Slott's writing, in that he has the ability to write multiple arcs at the same time.
Yeah.
Because, like, again, I'm going to use the phrase background characters because they're not Spider-Man.
Yeah. The supporting cast.
Yeah. Some of their arcs would be going on. So, like, if he started a 3-part arc like the Venom one, midway through that, he can start an arc of a background character, and that one doesn't have to finish till 2 or 3 trades later.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, I think that that's like a huge skill in this book, is that there's, like, before an arc even concludes, there's a new conflict being created.
Yeah, somewhere. And that is a strength of Dan Slott's writing, and I'm really excited to read the new Amazing Spider-Man.
Cool. One thing I did want to talk about was, part of the reason I think that this is a big deal for comic books is that they were able to create a series that was completely isolated from all events, from all crossovers, unless you wanted to read them. And, I mean, there was no point in this book that it was like, you will not get the conclusion of the story unless you buy Avengers. Like, that never happened. And that happens in so many of the books, even that I love. Like, that happens in Invincible, that happens in Batman, that happened every single issue in Batman in the 90s, to be honest. There's so many books that it's like, to complete this story arc, go buy a different book. And this book never does that. Superior Spider-Man gives you bought these 31 issues, that's it, and you got a complete story. And that's a huge deal. And it gave you an awesome starting point that was not a resetting of the universe totally. Like, so much of what happened in Spider-Man's history is directly affecting Otto's choices in this book, because the past continuity still matters in this book. It wasn't a hard reset. It wasn't even really like a soft reset. It was just like one status quo had changed, and the rest of the book was able to continue. And I think that if comic book companies want to get new readers involved in books, this is the kind of story that they need to pay attention to, because I read Superior Spider-Man #1 without having read like any of Dan Slott's previous run, and I didn't read any of the tie-ins, and I didn't read any of the annuals, and I'm now hooked. I'm now going to go on to read the new Spider-Man series because of what happened in this series.
Absolutely. And I hope more companies take cues from this.
Yeah, and the series is done now, so even if I chose not to move on to that, I still got a complete story.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you.
Not something that happened with Daredevil, which is another series that I really liked. But when Daredevil reset to a #1, that story wasn't over. Like, there's still more. I didn't feel like that was a good enough conclusion to that story.
Well, I think it's interesting that at the same time that Superior Spider-Man is coming out, Avenging Spider-Man, which is the Spider-Man team-up book, is also coming out. And if you weren't reading that book, like, you wouldn't even know it from reading Superior Spider-Man. Like, all this other stuff happened that you don't need to know to appreciate the story in Superior Spider-Man.
Yeah.
Even though it might, like, fill in some extra information, like, you can get by without it.
Yeah, I think that's really solid. I think that's a huge deal about the series, and I want other companies to, like, understand that that's what it takes to get new readers into the book, is an accessible, complete story.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you.
And it doesn't matter what number you put on it. Like, it has nothing to do with that. It has everything to do with how you package it and how you market it. And I just, like, it's a huge deal, and I thought this series succeeded so strongly for a book that works like that. And I hope that more creative teams are willing to try shit like this. And even with the fan backlash that was like, we hate Otto Octavius, but like...
that was expected.
But the balls that Marvel had to just be like, nah, Dan, just finish your arc. Like, fuck them. Like, we know
they had to
faith
know.
in you.
They had to know going into it that that's what was going to happen.
Yeah, but they had so much faith in Dan Slott's writing, and I think that that's awesome. And I think it's awesome when a company has that much faith.
And I should point out that even though I didn't like this book, I was against all the fan backlash. Even without reading this book, like, the fan backlash that was surrounding this book, I felt completely unwarranted.
Oh, I drank it up. The fan rage. Oh, it's so delicious.
Plus the the death threats to Dan Slott, completely unwarranted, and that is something you should never do. This is a work of fiction. Vote with your dollar, not with death threats.
Yeah, who death threats people?
I vote with death threats.
Yeah, I death threat fans. I death threat fans all the time. On the internet, it's my favorite thing. People are like, this is dumb, I hate this. It's like, you say that again, I'll beat the shit out of you. I'll come to your house and kill you. And they're like, what? Like, that's unwarranted. It's like, yeah, so stop fucking harassing creators. I hate it. Just buy, like Kate says, vote with your dollar. Just buy the book. If you don't like it, shut the fuck up.
I'm not going to buy this book, but I am going to buy the new stuff.
You can say, this book is bad. I don't like this. I think that this author did a terrible job. I know I've said all three of those things on this podcast many times.
Yeah.
But then you stop buying the book and that's the end of it.
Yeah, the best way to get that right.
I think I said all three of those things on the Black Sat episode.
I think the best way to get that author to stop writing is to stop paying them. And
stop paying attention to them.
Yeah. And it's just, regardless of how you feel about a company, if you don't like a decision that they're making, fuck being a collector and just, cut that company's pay source off. Like, you are their pay source.
Makes me mad because DC has this new series that I'm looking forward to, and yet Dan Jurgens is on it, and I just want to be like, I know I don't want to give you any money. Future's End.
Yeah, Future's End.
Oh, that looks actually sort of interesting.
Super cool.
I'm excited for that.
From the press release, and I'm like, but it's New 52.
Yeah, but...
Like, I feel like it's a
elements
trick.
of non-New 52. Like, bringing in pre-New 52 Tim Drake as being a character out of time looks to be really fucking cool.
Yeah, and I like Dan Jurgens. I like him a lot. I like him as an artist and a writer.
Yeah, I think DC's realized that they've fucked up royally with the New 52 reboot, and everything you're going to see in the next 5 years is either going to be to get rid of the New 52 or somehow make this universe work. And they're going to start trying more and more drastic stuff.
That's a very optimistic position.
The reason I don't like Dan Jurgens is because he, totally screwed up Green Arrow recently.
Yeah.
But
he totally, redeemed
series
Mr. Gold and made him awesome.
But the series does have Brian Azzarello, Jeff Lemire, and Keith Giffen, who all three are creators I love. So.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be really interesting. I think we're going to see some interesting stuff from DC before it all falls apart.
It's definitely something I'm going to keep my eye on.
Yeah.
And if people say good things about it, I may check it out.
Yeah, we'll see.
So, is there anything else that we wanted to say about Superior Spider-Man? Can we move on to recommendations?
I think everybody should read it.
Yeah, and I think you should give it to people who've never...
Even if you normally agree with me and you don't think you're going to like it, try it, because you might.
Well, and I think you should definitely give it to everyone who knows Spider-Man.
Well, I think it's a great example of every tropish thing that you can do in a comic book done well.
Yeah. There are some things I don't like about it, but, I mean, that aside, it's like, I still think this is a very solid series.
It's like a character dies, and everything changes, and there's costume changes, and...
Like a
crossover.
So many costume changes.
I love all the Spider-Man costumes that are in this book.
Yeah,
and it's got Spider-Man 2099 in it. How can you not like that?
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, all right.
No, some of the art on this book was incredible.
Yeah.
Some of it I didn't like just because I'm like, how would your leg even get in that position to begin with?
He's Spider-Man.
As much as I love Ramos's panel work, the way that he draws heads is weird. Especially like Spider-Man when he's got the mask on, it's like you can see his skull. It's I don't know. I don't like it.
There were a couple times too when characters had their heads turned and it almost looked like they were, instead of looking over their shoulder, it looked like they were exorcist heads.
Yeah, something.
Yeah, it was weird. But anyway, let's get to recommendations.
Yeah, you want to go first?
Yeah. So this week I brought a webcomic because Tobiah and I were talking about... Oh wow, I completely am stealing this from you.
No, go ahead.
We were talking about how webcomics are kind of the future. This is...
Well, you talked about it in the last blog post a little bit.
A little bit, but this is actually a different aspect of it. And what Kate and I were talking about on the way over here is about how when you make a traditional comic, there are gatekeepers, there are producers, there are editors, there are people who are like, we can't market this to our 8 to 15 boys demographic.
Right.
And, this TV show is getting more of a girl audience than we wanted, and so we're going to cancel it because if girls start watching it, then boys won't watch it, and the boys buy toys and girls don't.
Right.
Like there's all these fucking layers.
Yeah.
And when you have webcomics, like there is no mediation. Like there is a creator, there is a work, there is an audience, and the work is as popular as its merits take it.
Yeah. So, a good webcomic will take off regardless of any marketing that's been done.
Right.
Yeah, and not only do they have control over like the content with a traditional comic, but they also have control over the format. Like, is it going to come out weekly? Is it going to come out monthly? Is it going to be how many pages?
And
is
those
it going to be in
change all the time in webcomics.
And in webcomics, it doesn't matter. It's like you have 4 pages to put out. Fucking put out 4 pages. Like,
you succeed or fail based on the merits of your work.
Yeah. And there's no constraint.
And things are always changing. Webcomics can change their schedules, just like we have changed our schedule on this podcast multiple times. I handed out a business card the other day, and it actually said a bi-monthly.
Well, yeah, like
is it bi-monthly or bi-weekly?
This is bi-weekly.
Oh, bi-weekly.
Yeah. We got cards made up once, and they said bi-weekly on them because we were bi-weekly at that point.
Yeah, like a year ago, I think we were still.
Yeah, like a year and a year plus.
Yeah. I remember it was before the last Emerald City.
Yeah, we got them printed up for the last Emerald City in 2013.
And I tried to get some printed up for this year, and things went south.
Yeah, whatever happened with that?
The company went out of business.
Oh, fun.
Yay, locals. Support your local businesses.
Nice.
While they're still around.
Yeah.
So what are you pitching, Cade?
Okay, so I am pitching a webcomic created by David Willis, and it's a college webcomic about a bunch of completely different characters. I'm holding up a little poster here that you guys can't see for...
Okay, that's the guy who does Short Pact, and he also did a comic before that called, I think, Malky?
I have no idea what you're talking about.
If you're on the internet at all, you have probably seen a Short Pact comic linked somewhere. It's ostensibly about a group of people who work in a toy store, but they're all like super nerdy and talk about a lot of the stuff we talk on the podcast. And he occasionally will do just like side comics about random things. Like there's one where it's like Superman's like, Batman, your helmet is open. And Batman's like, I'm Batman and I can breathe in space. And there's one where somebody's like, so Batman trained to be the best at everything, right? And it's Batman doing DDR. Like he does a bunch of these like random comics that are really funny.
Yeah,
he's actually, a very well-known webcomic artist.
Yeah, and Walkie is actually one of the characters.
Walkie, not Malky.
Yeah, Walkie. He's actually this guy right here.
Okay. Kate is holding up his tablet so that we can see.
Yeah, yes. the poster that David Willis did for some 2013 event with a bunch of webcomics writers, including Jeff Jocks and whatnot. Mm-hmm. This comic I've had compared before with questionable content.
Okay.
And I get a lot of flack for saying this, well, not in this group, but I actually don't like questionable content anymore.
No one will give you flack in this room for that.
Exactly.
I don't know what that is.
It was a webcomic that was really good until he got full of himself.
So I wouldn't quite put it in those terms, but it was a comic that was very good for a period of time, and then I feel like he stopped challenging himself.
Yeah.
You guys know a lot more about webcomics than I do, because you're like, oh, this super famous webcomic, and I'm like, I've never heard of that. What?
That's fine. Well, I mean, you're comic store people, and we're online people.
Yeah,
so what was the title of the comic?
Dumbing of Age.
Dumbing of Age.
Yeah, and it's about a bunch of different college students who are vastly different from each other, interacting in just completely hilarious and off-the-wall ways. And like one of the characters, she dresses up like a superhero and fights crime, and then falls in love with a boy, but the boy likes her as the superhero and not for her. And another girl is super Christian, and people will often argue with her, and she gets into a lot of arguments that end up being hilarious, and her best friend turns out to be a lesbian, and all this other stuff that's crazy and kooky, and it's really good.
Nice.
I liked it. Oh, and this was a recommendation by our listener, Brian, who sent me an email with like 20 recommendations that I'm going to get through over the next 20 or 30
keep
weeks.
Sending us recommendations, everybody.
Yeah, Kate at viewfromthegutters.com. You got a recommendation, send it to me.
Send us to all of us. Do contact.
Or, contact at viewfromthegutters.com.
You're hogging that list. None of us can see it.
That's true.
Well, yes, but you guys keep bringing good stuff, and I keep bringing back my shitty superhero books.
That's not true. I brought Spider-Man last week.
Yes, but that's not one of my shitty superhero comics.
Yeah, I don't feel like you can call them shitty superhero comics because at least they're better than Space Ghost.
Wait, I brought Space Ghost.
Yes, and I'm saying that is now the shittiest thing that you've ever brought. And as long as you bring something better than that, it's not shitty, quote unquote.
What about Green Hornet Parallel Lives?
That's not a superhero comic.
It's
pulp.
It's the official prequel to the movie that was really bad.
The movie was fun.
I never saw
bad,
it.
but it's fun.
So
I actually liked it.
Have anything else that you wanted to say of Dumbing of Age?
Just read it. It's free. I mean, it's out in trades now, but you can still read it all on the website. So
it's on the website. Is it color, black and white?
Oh, it's color.
Is it like the poster that we were just looking at?
The poster is like a panel.
Sweet.
Yeah, and if you read it and enjoy it, check out Short Packed.
Cool.
Which is it's generally pretty funny. It's not one of my favorite webcomics, but it's all right.
Oh, and this book does have very strong female characters, which is...
They're strong? They lift in cars?
Very well-written female characters.
I get on everyone about that. I don't know why. It's just so funny to me.
Well, the one who dresses up as a superhero, she's very strong.
There you go. Cool.
So
just wait until I pitch She-Hulk.
Strong female character.
She's a strong female character.
I'll be like, oh, right on. Because she is. Yeah.
All right. So, yeah, that's my pitch. Dummingofage.com. David Willis.
Cool.
So I also brought a comic book that was originally published on the web.
Nice.
I think the intention was always for it to be put in print, but I guess it was technically a webcomic to begin with. And this is The Adventures of Superhero Girl by Faith Erin Hicks. This is an all-ages story. It's relatively short. It's just a little over 100 pages.
Nice.
And it's kind of a look at the more human side of superheroes. It's about a superhero named Superhero Girl.
Which is an awesome name.
It is an awesome name. And she's the superhero for the city. She's like a college student. She got a government grant to be a superhero. And she just goes around having adventures and fights giant aliens from space and rescues a cat, and goes to a party with her roommate. Her older brother is also a superhero that is way cooler and more popular than her. And she's super jealous of him, especially when he like comes to her city and like everybody loves him.
Nice.
She fights her evil self from the future. She fights a bear with a monocle.
Nah, I love this already.
And it's just this, it's a great, fun, like sweet, all ages superhero story.
Cool.
I really love Faith Erin Hicks. It's really well done. It's very Canadian. And
everybody's really nice all the time.
Yeah, just polite, friendly. I read it like a year and a half ago on the last day of Emerald City last year. I swung by the Dark Horse booth and they had things like 25 or 50% off. And so I grabbed a hardcover of it. That's really nice. Yeah, it's got a cool foreword by Mark Waid.
Sweet.
And it's just a great little story where you really get to kind of see the human side of things from a superhero perspective.
And is this still free to read online?
I'm not sure. If you want to check it out, on the back it has a URL, superherogirladventures.blogspot.com. Cool. And if it's not available online, I think at least some of it is, you can pick up the hardcover from Dark Horse, and it is... The hardcover that I have is $17. I think that there's a soft cover that's a little bit cheaper now.
That's a really good deal for that hardcover, though. It's really well put together.
Yeah, it's really nice. It's full color and everything, and it's actually got like a wide screen format, like a
anthropomorphic.
Yeah, like a newspaper comic strip aspect ratio.
Yeah.
So that is The Adventures of Superhero Girl.
Nice.
Chard, what did you bring?
I brought a sweet series that I read this week, or no, I read it a couple weeks ago. And because I was going to bring it last week, and then I remembered that Spider-Man came out, so I was like, oh, I'll save it. It's called Juice Squeezers. It's by David Lapham, with colors by Lee Luridge. And the first issue, the first cover has a splash tag on it that said, like a tagline that says, "Scrawny kids versus giant bugs." I was like, all right, okay, I'll read that. And basically what this is there's this town where, for unknown reasons, there are these large bugs that live under the town, like dog-sized beetles and roaches and long centipedes and stuff. And they live under the town, and no one's really sure why. But when this one specific farm like had a harvest, there was ready to harvest, so there's all this food grown. All these bugs just came up from under the town and just like massacred the farm basically. And so all of these people in the town went to protect the farm, and they had this like massive battle with these bugs, and all the bugs that died on that farm like fertilized it and made it even more sought after farmland. So there's like this kind of weird, oh, we're trying to trick everybody into not buying this really good farmland because there's secretly all these bugs underneath it, and they like hid it from the FDA. And to combat these bugs, because the bugs are in these small tunnels underground, they use kids to like go into the tunnels and the ventilation systems and smash up all these bugs, and they're called juicers. And they're these kids, and the story revolves around these like 6 middle school kids that go underground and smash up giant bugs.
And you said that this is an all ages story?
It's an all ages story. It's 4 issues right now. The trade comes out in August, and the Free Comic Book Day, the 3rd, coming up pretty soon.
3rd of May. That's a Saturday.
First Saturday in May is always Free Comic Book Day.
Go to your local comic book shop. Yeah. Get as many free comics as you want.
And one of those free comics will contain Juice Squeezers in it. And I think it's a new story. Because at the end of this one, it says they will return in that Free Comic Book Day issue. Basically, you find out that there is a lot more going on with the bugs than just their bugs. And so the series, this is a complete arc, but it is not done as a series. There's going to be more afterwards. It was really fun. It's good to see books about kids and just their kind of like weird kid not understanding of how stuff works and their relationships. And yeah, it's weird. Their teachers, like this Nick Fury character with like one eye, and he lost his eye to the bugs when he was a juicer as a kid or something. And it's just like this really surreal setting, and it's not the greatest comic I've ever read, but the setting is so like non-traditional and original, and just the ideas are so fresh that I immediately fell in love with it. And I was like, this is the kind of stuff I love, where science doesn't need a massive explanation. It's just there, you know? Like the stuff is just happening.
Awesome. So, Cade, what do you want to read?
Superhero Girl.
Nice.
I'm going to vote for Juicers.
Sweet. I'm going to vote for, Cade, what'd you bring? No, I'm going to vote for Supergirl Girl as well, so we don't have a tie.
Excellent.
It sounds really fun.
It is. It's a lot of fun.
Borrow that from you and read it in the hardcover.
Awesome. So, next week, Adventures of Superhero Girl.
Yep.
The Resurrected Corpse of Joe Preddy.
Yep. And our long run should come out shortly after we release the next episode. So we're recording it.
We haven't released a long run since we moved to Wednesdays as a release day. So probably...
Yeah, we did. Did
we?
Yeah, we did it, and we released it on like a Friday or a Saturday.
Okay. So yeah, maybe Friday or Saturday.
Yeah, probably Saturday. So all right,
and that's going to be our Invincible long run, where we're going to talk all the way up to issue 110. So up to the latest trade, and then the 2 issues after that, which is the last issue that came out.
Yep.
And something very controversial happens.
Yeah, we're recording this in between this. We're recording this issue and the next issue, or the next episode of the show. So you'll get episode 65, and then you'll get the long run coming out.
Yes. So
keep reading Invincible, and we will see you guys next week.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you for listening to Me from the Gutters. I hope our recommendations have inspired you to go out and find some new comics you'll enjoy. Join us next time for a discussion of our selected title, but like every week, we encourage you to read all of the recommended books. In the meantime, please leave us an iTunes review. It really does help new listeners find the show. You can also like us on Facebook, subscribe to our YouTube, and follow us on Twitter at ViewFRTHGutters. Feel free to email us at contact@viewfromthegutters.com. Please send us any questions, comments, or recommendations you might have. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel as we post new videos every week. And thanks again for listening. And as always, keep reading.